Hey everybody, this is Munch and Steve, and you are on Star Studio. And of course, I am with one of my favorite, and she'll let you know. She is truly one of the creative geniuses that is truly pushing the envelope on how we see and utilize our Black lens. Now, lenses are what happens when we actually say, this is our vision. Tamra Simmons, I am so proud of you and the conversation that you've pushed forward. Why, how, and share with the audience what your role is and what your vision was when you brought this special, and you can tell them special,
Okay.
um, to life.
Yeah, so I guess it was back in 2017. There were like allegations that were coming out against R. Kelly. There was these black women that were speaking out, and I remember, thinking back to the 2008 case and trial that he had, and I was just like, I wonder what happened with that trial. I remember he got off, but I wasn't sure as to why. I didn't follow the trial back then. But of course, it was headline news, and so I was aware of it. So I'm like 10 years later, these women are still talking about, this has happened to them, this is happening to them. Like I wanted to just investigate and see what truth was there, or what exactly, why these black women are coming forward now. I didn't know what actually, prompted them to. And during that time, of course, the Me Too movement was going on. And then you had like the Harvey Weinstein case and those women that came out. But when I looked, I'm like, you know, our culture wasn't speaking out. Like these black women weren't a part of the Me Too movement at the time. And I didn't know why, even though the Me Too movement creator, Tarana Burke, was a black woman. And so I knew from, just being a black woman that it was told like if something happens to you sexually, like keep it to yourself, be private. It's between you and your family, like, but I never knew why as a culture we were taught that way, and we were taught to teach that way. And so, of course, me being nosy and just wanting to know like how these black women were experiencing this, I contacted a family that was in the news, the Savages, and I knew they lived in Atlanta, and at the time I was in Atlanta, and so I said, is there a way that we can meet just so I can see if there's something I can help you guys with? Didn't even think that it was going to be like a television show or really uncover what was uncovered. And so I sat with the family, and then they told me about another family, the Clarys, and then they told me about the other women. And it was so much to take in. I honestly was just kind of appalled. And so they're like, yeah, we can call some of the women, and like, we're letting you know we're not, this isn't fabrication. This isn't anything against R. Kelly. This isn't for money. Like, this is for justice for black women. So, me being a television producer, I knew that there's some form of like media platform that, you could push you basically can push this out so people are aware of it. And so that's when I just started asking them, like, would they be interested in speaking, like, on camera? And I was like, I don't even know if this can go anywhere, but I want to provide you guys with some sort of platform to be able to speak on this matter. And from that, pretty much we had ended up having 55 participants, and then we had Surviving R. Kelly Part 1. And then after Part 1, there was more women that came forward. And so then we had Part 2, and then currently we're, following the trial.
So, for anybody who wants to be a producer, who has an idea like you call it nosy. I think there's a nosy factor that Cooley is a H factor, that human factor. I need to know.
Hmm.
This is on my mind.
Yeah, it was like a gut feeling and an intuition. Yeah, I say nosy, but really it was my spirit. I just felt that there was something here, something there. I just wanted to know what it was I was supposed to do, because I felt that it came to me, and that I felt that way in my spirit because there was something for me to do, like a bigger purpose outside of myself, because I do have a daughter, and I do work in entertainment, and I'm like, this could easily be my daughter, not necessarily with R. Kelly, but with, another music figure, male or female.
So, for those who want to know, what do you do next? Do you have them sign contracts before you start shooting them? Do you close it out? If they're really trying to understand and they have this idea in their mind,
Hmm.
what are kind of the next steps? Obviously, you as a producer have it, but for the young producers who really are coming behind you, what
Yeah.
should they know getting into this business?
Well, you have to have a vision, and you have to be passionate about it. I didn't know if this was going to make it to television, even while we were able to, talk to Lifetime, and Lifetime wanted to provide it on their platform. We still didn't know if it was going to air or not. But I knew what my mission was and my goal was, and in which I told, the survivors and their families, I said, I want you guys to receive justice, and whatever that looks like, I'm gonna be here until you receive justice. And so once the television show aired, I didn't just stop um, saying that's it, because justice still wasn't served. There was a knowledge, there. So if a young producer, if you have a passion, you have a vision, and you want to tell stories, you have to know that it's not going to go necessarily like A, B, C, and D. You kind of have to follow your intuition, follow your vision, and follow your spirit, and then just don't give up. I just was like, no, this isn't it. And then as you uncover more and more, if there's something there, you have to, like, it may nudge you to dive in to do something different, and you have to take that, direction, and understand, like, follow your spirit, follow your intuition. And that's honestly what I did. And I didn't have the women there. I'm like, I'm not like, oh, you got to sign a contract or anything. I'm like, listen, this is what I want to do. I just need permission. So it's really signing permission for me to be able to, tell your story and help you tell your story and show your story. But if they didn't want to sign an agreement, which I've talked to a lot of women who didn't do the documentary, and I'm still in contact with them, told them, gave them therapist referrals and things like that. So that's what I was saying. You have to have a heart for it, because if you're doing it for just television, you would just discount the women that didn't want to speak on TV, and then just focus on the ones that did. And that's not what I did. It's not something that, like, I put out there, like, oh, I'm doing this and that, because it's not. I didn't even know I could receive awards or be nominated for any of the things that, like Surviving R. Kelly received. I received over 26 awards and, 30 something nominations, including the Emmy, nomination. And that's not something that I even knew could happen. And when I'm, invited to red carpets, I'm like, I don't want to do the red carpet. Like, I'll take a photo for memories for myself, but it wasn't for the media or anything like that, because it was really to provide a platform for these Black women that are speaking about R. Kelly, but possibly in the same situation with someone that's not R. Kelly, and giving them strength to be able to come out and understand that it's not necessarily their fault. Because I think a lot of women thought it was their fault. Well, I put myself in this situation where I wore these kind of clothes, and I did this and I did that. So as a producer, you have to be, like you were saying, a human being at the end of the day. It's not about a television show, it's about humanity. And for me, I wanted to give Black women a platform to be able to share their stories, and for society to actually see that this happens to Black women as well.
So I love the when we first met in the same compassion. And I'm glad it's a movement. It was a Black women's movement more than anything else. And I loved it because you didn't allow the national media to ignore. And people kind of pounced on the movement that you shed light on.
They
Like,
pounced on me too. They still pounce on me. Well, you're a Black woman. Why would you try to take a Black man down? And I'm like, it's not about taking a Black man down. It's about Black women being protected and being understood and being heard. And even following the trial and seeing how the defense counter, cross-examines these women, and they're saying, oh, you were a fan. Oh, you want his autograph, didn't you? Oh, did you miss the shopping sprees? That's why you went back and forth with him. I mean, hearing their testimonies and then hearing the cross-examining attorneys pretty much degrade and, bash these women. And it's just heartbreaking to me to even see and to hear.
but for us as a culture, are we following the trial like you think we should? Is the Black community really sharing on both social or Black celebrities with men who have daughters? Are they really talking about the trial? Is it a thing for us?
It's a To me, it's a clickbait for the media, because they're not talking to these women who were on this stand, who still somewhat, you can tell, are reluctant to share exactly what happened to them, because they don't feel like they're going to be protected once they get off the stand. The Black media that I have found, there's only maybe a handful, not even on one hand, Black media blogs that are actually talking about how to move forward, how to protect Black women, how to protect Black fathers. There's more media coverage on Tim Savage should have done this, Angelo Clary should have done this as a father. These women, so and so got a breast job, and it's just salacious, and it really they really degrade these women, because they actually are not protecting them. They're just bashing them for speaking out. So I think as a Black culture and in the Black community, we have to do better for ourselves, because we're not making it easy for women to speak out because of the backlash that is received and the cyberbullying that happens.
So for even bigger intellectuals, bigger morning show, Gail, is she following the trial every day or once a week on her show? Is she
I
bringing
don't.
that to light?
I haven't seen any coverage with Gail. I don't know if she's, sometimes Gail gears up to do specials and then she just drops them, like how Drake and all these people drop their albums, Kanye. So sometimes Gail does that. So I can't say that she's not, following the trial, but I don't see the daily coverage. Now, Good Morning Britain has reached out to me. Good Morning America hasn't. But a lot of like a local, like Roland, I think it's Roland Martin, a lot of them have, wanted me to talk about the trial. And at first I was like declining it, but now I'm fired up because I really see how these Black women aren't protected once they get off the stand. And I actually, encountered some of the blunt from some of the women speaking out because of like me doing Surviving R. Kelly. Like, I'm like, no, and I'm not backing down this time. And I'm not, it's time for Black men and Black women to step up and protect, Black women as well. Because there's a lot of Black women bloggers who actually just sit around and talk about these women. Did you hear her testimony? Well, why did she stay with him? Why did she do this? Like, it's just a lot of victim shaming, and we have to do better as a culture.
But why is it that we're prepared as a culture to sacrifice future daughters, future relationships, for men not to say, not only are we going to do better, I know better, and vocalize and apologize and move forward? We all know now that I can't look at you, look up and down and act like it, make offers, think that a shopping spree justifies sex. I mean, but are we going to say it out loud, or is this something that we're going to allow to move forward? And are we also fighting a counterintuitive culture where you literally have this entire women taking their bodies, throwing it out, and people saying, well, is that appropriate? I mean, you see a lot of coverage now that has so minimal coverage when you think about it. And does that confuse everybody when, you have the whole idea of strip club culture is almost like breakfast food?
Yeah, so, as far as like the strip club culture and things like that, does that equate to being degraded as a woman because you're in the sex work industry? Does that mean that, because you do that, like you open yourself up to certain things? Of course, but as a culture and a society, why do we have to say, well, she's a stripper, so she should expect this? Like, why is that an expectation? I think that we have to like deprogram ourselves in our brains, and we as a society have to do better. We want the white people to help us with Black Lives Matter. We want, people to accept us, but when we don't even accept ourselves because we have certain expectations of ourselves, we've been taught to if this woman is looking this way, well, she's a whore, or she's fast, like, and it people sometimes justify, well, that's why she got raped, because look what she's always wearing. Like, what kind of mentality do we really have as a culture, and who taught us that? And
And is it being discussed though? Is
it's
it
not
one of
being
those?
discussed.
Is it one of those things so that the mentality? Because I
Yeah,
think
it has to be.
the other thing is if you'll pay for anything, then if you'll pay to do anything, then most people will say then anything goes. So if you're paid, so I get it. It's clear. But is it out in front so that we can really decipher even our unlearned behavior?
these are conversations that have to be like the conversation that we're having. Those conversations have to be had on a regular basis, and they're not being had. I don't think I've ever heard a conversation about Black women and what they're wearing and being in this sex work industry or whatever. No one has had any conversations about this except for when Surviving R. Kelly came out, and then it became a topic and a discussion. So my thing is, Surviving R. Kelly serves its purpose because now those conversations are easy to have. Like it's easy for me to have a conversation with you about it. But before, people were like, "That's not really going on," or as a culture, we just kind of keep everything swept under the rug. And so I personally have a mission to make this be more conversations because I think the more we talk about it, the more we see it, the more we understand it. It may not help my generation or, our generation, but it can help future generations to come. And I mean, just like I always say, like Rosa Parks, she didn't know when she was sitting on the back of the bus that she was actually, doing a heroic thing. But now we talk about Rosa Parks in, history books and things like that. And so now it's like, I may not even live to be able to see the difference that this is going to make, but my future daughter's daughter or children may be able to see that. And I may or may not be in a history book, but that's not my goal or anything like that. But I just know that it takes years for things to happen. And I'm like, this has been 3 years, 2.5, 3 years since Surviving R. Kelly. And so if I have to talk about this until I'm 88, I'm fine with that.
Well, please don't shrink. As a sister, I don't need you to shrink. You don't get 26 awards and not be in history books. Number one, you're already in the history books. That's not the. I think the question is, have we as a Black culture identified how we're tolerating the destruction of our community through continued social norms that aren't normal, that really need to be taken apart?
Yeah. I agree. I think that we have a lot to do. It's a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of people. I actually created a list of those that have an impact on our culture, and that I'm creating something that I can't really talk about, but you'll see it in months to come, to where these people are going to be able to be on a platform to speak and utilize their voices, to be able to make that change and that shift, because that's what we have to keep doing. Like these conversations have to be had, and then we have to define what is a Black woman really supposed to um, look like, be like. What are our expectations as Black women and men, like from each other, and dissecting those as to why and how we even came to that conclusion, and then kind of go from there.
So does the culture kind of understand even the mute R. Kelly aspect that you brought to life? Do they understand why there was a need to mute R. Kelly? Are we still
Well,
clear, or are we still
no,
conflicted that
yeah, I
we,
think I mean, you can see we're still conflicted because Drake came out with his Certified Lover Boy, and I think R. Kelly is like a co-writer, co-creator on one or two of his songs on the album. So it goes back to why mute someone who is a musical genius and helped everyone step in the name of love at reunions. Why mute them? Can you separate the art from the artist? You know, or the person. Can you separate it? And I think as a culture, we don't want to let go of those that we have loved to like and love their music, even if they have created, because some people think it didn't affect my family or my daughter or my sister or my aunt. So, I'm okay with it. And some people are like, it did affect someone that I know, but, it doesn't hurt to listen to his music. And I think that, those are conversations that are, of course, are being had and said. But I think as a culture that we need to not support certain actions. And I believe still listening to that person's music, playing that music is supporting.
so is the culture very clear that Drake has supported R. Kelly?
The culture, I believe as a culture, we think it's okay, to sample his music and continue to So I think Drake knew what he was doing. Drake, he knew that this was going to be a controversial topic, and people are going to want to download the song to listen to it to see, what exactly is everybody talking about this R. Kelly song.
Right. So if you had a disease
Mhm.
or the cancer, how would you describe this mental cancer that whether it's a pedophile, sexual addiction, how would you describe that support as a disease if you were, and not if, you're a mom? So
Mhm.
how would you describe that disease to the radio, Spotify, all the people that are going to play this record breaking download, and not for them not to understand that they've not only spread the disease, but they've actually, somebody's profiting from some pain?
Yeah, so I would really describe it in a way to where, exactly like you said, the songs, if you listen to some of them, they're regarding 12, 13, 14-year-old women, that, R. Kelly was writing about at the time. So if you knew that you were with him during that time that he made that song, and you're the woman that was affected by it, and you continuously hear it, it brings triggers to you. I remember being in a restaurant with one of the survivors in New York, and we were eating. It was a soul food restaurant, and one of R. Kelly songs came on, and she just panicked. So I had to get up and actually go to the owner. And she was like, "Can you please turn it off? Can you please turn it off?" Just like put her hand over her ears. "Can you please turn it off? Please turn it off. I can't hear this. I can't hear this." So I don't think that the radio personalities and those radio programmers understand the effect that music does have influence. They understand music has influence. It's not just in a good way. It's in a bad. It can be in bad ways too. I just had the conversation with my son who is 10 years old, and I was telling him he's listening to all these artists that have died. I said, "Son, you're putting death in your ears, even though they're not alive, and you're still listening to their music, and you're talking to your friends on TikTok about their songs." I'm like, "Why are you listening to these dead three rappers?" I'm not gonna say their names, but he was listening to their music. I said, "Why are you listening to all these dead rappers' music?" They're like, "There's something that's pulling you, a spiritual, I feel like it's a spiritual attachment, that like there's spirits in music." And so I think even down to R. Kelly and his music, there's spirits, sexual spirits, there's demons. I just feel like it's demonic to me, because I don't know if you're talking about, you know, when you wrote Ignition, who you were talking about. Was it a young girl, or like, who are you talking about? You want to, put your key in their ignition. Like, I just can't unsee even the child pornography videos that he's had, and I just can't unsee it. And I'm like, how can radio programmers, how can they not separate that?
Sunday morning, do we believe that on Sunday morning there will be any faith leaders bringing their congregations, asking them, teaching, sharing insight onto how?
Get me started on the church, please. Oh Lord, no. I just,
Will they talk about R. Kelly at all?
oh, I mean, they've talked about him, and they've supported him, and they know he's a brother and God forgives. And I'm not a judge. Like, God does forgive us, but they're like, "Oh, he needs healing, we need to pray for him." But I never hear them talk about the women. I never, I mean, right now, if you're following the trial, they're up to Jane Doe number 20 and John Doe number 2. So who's praying for those victims?
Is it about the victims? Do they ever see the victims?
No,
Um, have we put a real face on the victims? Are
no.
we do we
Like,
judge
we just say that they're Black women, and that's it. There's no
do
faces.
we judge the women?
Yeah, the Black women should have known. That's what I was saying. I can't get started on the church because I haven't heard a pastor say we need to uplift all these Black women. I would love to be corrected if there's pastors that have said it, but I just haven't heard anyone praying for the women that have came forward. They've all wanted money, they wanted fame, they wanted to walk the red carpet, they wanted to be acknowledged. They got mad because he stopped giving them money. I've heard all of that, but I haven't heard these women need prayer. We need to, and let me invite them to our church as a special guest. None of that.
So do you think this is going to be the last trial as you kind of continue to investigate? Do you think this will be the last trial that he'll face in New York? Do you think that he has a moment that he'll seek and will justice be served?
I was discussing this yesterday and kind of going back and forth because the trial is wrapping in New York, but Chicago is waiting as soon as New York is finished. So as soon as New York is done, he goes to Chicago to face the charges that he has in Chicago. And how long that trial is going to last, not sure. I do feel like justice, from what I've heard, the testimonies and the cross examining, and I don't, it's because of COVID, you can't really see the jury. Like, I think this will be live on television if we were not in a pandemic, but you can't see the jury's faces. So I'm not really sure how they're actually, feeling about the things that they're hearing, because the cross examiners are doing, what they were hired to do, basically to discredit these women. So it kind of has me a little bit nervous as to if he will actually be convicted of everything that has came forward, or maybe just, is he going to get 5 years and have to serve, time served? He's already served 2.5. So I don't know.
So is it your insight that literally as somebody watching your evolution, because obviously we've got you know part four coming,
Three.
part three coming in the making.
But they don't, it's not, I don't know if I can say that because we haven't announced it yet.
No, and I was kind of even getting to part four because it seems like it's
Okay.
something. It's a
Yeah.
gift that keeps giving.
Yeah.
That their angles, and then literally, it's all about what you just said. Like literally, you go back and you look at how somebody was on, and you just think of 20 years, and so these trials, where will it be 10 years from now, and then where are the victims 10 years from now?
Right.
And that's kind of what we're seeing, is people are having to recant experiences that happened to them 10 years, 5 years ago, and literally have the scars,
And some 20 now, because there's victims that came forward from 1998.
and so they're having to rip scars, have their character examined. um, Literally their family members are brought into that. It costs to move and be there. And then is there a help or heal hotline that has been set up for these women?
Yeah, so we partner with several different organizations like Color for Change, and there's of course domestic violence hotline numbers, and those numbers were actually broadcasted on the documentary.
Yeah.
And after the documentary, those numbers, those hotlines, spiked. They said that they got numerous calls regarding women that have been in the same situation, and men as well. And I got flooded with DMs, and just a lot of people just they were feeling relief because of these women coming forward and being heroic, and like actually showing that they have these scars and allowing the world to see them and experience this with them. And so it gave them, other victims strength as well, to know that they're not the only ones in this situation.
Well, let's, before we close, there are a couple of subjects in for any young person who's looking to start some type of cultural, because I want to stay in the subjects that you're in. Obviously, um, college rape. Is that something we should be investigating?
Yeah, I think the numbers have gone up so much in college rapes. And I actually was studying a case that happened at Clark I followed the whole case, or like from the missing persons report, everything. So I actually trying to wrap my head around how that continues to happen. And then I had a family member that it actually happened to as well. She just recently opened up to me about it. And it's just, it happens. And then, there's no justice for these college girls or guys that experience this as well. So I think that is a conversation that needs to be like, everything needs to be cleaned up. And I think if we don't converse about it and have these conversations, it's going to be just kept swept under the rug, under the rug, under the rug.
Question just on top of that, Black domestic violence.
Mhm.
Where are we? Are we gonna see? Is that something else that we should be investigating in our culture, so that we could kind of see ourselves in truth as it relates to the violence that is perpetuated in both music and the affection? And do we have the wrong affection for even the drug business? Are we should we really, or should television really celebrate it as much as it does, versus investigate it and demonstrate the pain in the bodies and the yellow tape that's left?
Yeah, I think that television shows how our culture celebrates violence in all different ways, and drugs, and what it looks like if you can have a Rolls Royce without having really to work for it because you can just go out here and sell. I think that, of course, that's in the music, then the music videos, and then those songs wins awards, like from the VMAs to, the Grammys and things like that. So people want to do it more because they're getting this gratification from others and validation from others because of it. So I think that those are conversations we need to have. Um, Not only talk about, because we're quick to talk about the racism, how Black Lives Matter, and we're quick to talk about how, the prison system, what it does to Black men, which I just finished a documentary doing that. And so social justice reform, we talk about that, but we don't talk about like what we're doing to our community and what we need to do to clean it up. We always expect the rest of the world to clean it up for us and to understand our pain when we're actually giving ourselves the pain. We're like taking basically medicine from our culture, our own selves, and saying, hey, shoot this dope up. Like, hey, like go rape that girl. Hey, if she don't want to give it to you, take it. Like that's yours. We're teaching that through our music, and we have to stop teaching that and then stop waiting for the white people to help us in our community when we're damaging it ourselves.
So beautiful. What you said was key. We're doing it ourselves, but we talked about that. Why would you investigate men and rape in prison?
Well, I actually know that there was a riot that happened. I worked with the director Jaquel Durham. It was actually he brought it to my attention. There was this riot that happened in South Carolina, in the prison, and actually these men, there was 7 men that were killed during the riot, and they were all Black men. And so I just wanted to know, and we wanted to know actually, like, why was this the deadliest riot in the past 25 years, and why it was never covered on television? And to me, it came down to the race and being Black men, and of course Black men not being important because of that. So I was very passionate about this project, and so we invested in it independently and put it together. And now we have, it's called, the public culture of the prison. So we have Georgia, Mississippi, um, we're going to Louisiana and South Carolina, all those states pretty much for that, to uncover that.
So, what should we know about prison that we're really, not saying as a culture? Once again, it's something that no one's going to talk about. It might not make the, um, blogs, any of those things. What do you think we as a community can do better?
Well, we have to help with the wrongful conviction. There's tons of turnovers for wrongful conviction. And then we also have to um, have the system understand as a culture, like how this is affecting our Black men, whether, some of them will, I don't even know anything about drugs, so, but selling like a little gram of weed, sometimes somebody will get 5 years and then there'll be a murder sentence or attempted murder and they'll get probation. It's like, but it's a white man or white woman that did the attempted murder and got less of a sentence. So it's really the solution would be overturning a lot of these conviction, like as far as the number of years these Black men are sentenced to prison, and a lot of it has to do with the race.
We talk about predeterminants of health, but maybe it's a predeterminants of, you know, prison introduction, prison suggestion, the entire time for a young, obviously Black male and female. Is there a predeterminants of that the society can actually project?
Yeah, so what I found that through the statistics, Black men are going to get a harsher sentence. They're already guilty when they walk in a courtroom, and they get a harsher sentence than their white counterparts because of their race. So if they're a Black male, this is their second maybe time running into the law, or it could be their first time. They still are gonna, it's a higher risk of having a harder conviction. And then they know that, you know, a lot of Black men can't afford attorneys to get a lesser sentence. So they assign them, of course, to a public defender, but that public defender is just doing their job, basically what the court wants them to do. It's not really for, you know, um, the young man. And so they end up going to court and just telling them, like, you need to go ahead and plead guilty, even if you're not, because I can't get you out of this. So you're stuck. You're like, okay, well, let me plead guilty because I at least know I can do 5 years versus trying to fight it and knowing that I don't have the money or resources to be able to win this battle.
Well, I appreciate I hope anybody watching clearly understands that you are a movement by yourself for our community. So I want to thank you. I really love all that you give to our culture because these are the gifts that will cause us to at least reflect on who we are and what we do to each other. Everybody, this is Tamra Simmons, the true superstar, executive producer. I'm saying 3 or 4, it might be 10.
Yeah, and that another thing is too, people think, oh, do you just talk about Black men? I'm like, no, I have other documentaries that you're gonna see. I can't say which network, but it'll air next summer, and the person is not Black. Shocking.
Well, I
But it's
appreciate
it's a big case that the person ended up coming to me wanting to actually tell their side of the story. So
I'm on the stage. You watch a Star Studio. Hopefully, if you want to be a producer, documentarian, series creator for television, you've seen one of the best. You can study her work. She's a gift to our culture. We want to say thank you, Ms. Simmons, for all you give to the culture, protecting and inspiring others to be curious as much as nosy, to be committed, and to, if nothing else, know that you have to be passionate to tell a story about how and why we can do better and love ourselves better. I'm Munson Seed, and this is Star Studio with Tamara Simmons.
thank you.
Thank you.